G'day, everyone. Welcome to another Toon podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's biggest, best, and brightest Newcastle United podcast. We're here for another live show. We've got Jack and Mark in Brisbane. Jack, how are you?
I'm very good. Yeah, very good. Pleased to be back on. It's been a while since I've been on. I've had a child, as most people know, so it was really a bit touch and go whether I'd make it on time. It's 8 o'clock here in Brisbane. Putting one to bed at that time is hard enough. Trying to put two to bed adds a whole nother dimension to it. But yeah, the wife's on board, so here we are. I'm looking forward to it. Nice to see you.
It's fantastic to have you, Mark. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing well. 2 in a row for me. Hopefully with a bit more stable internet connection tonight, given I've been shopping at Officeworks and getting some more tech on board to see if I can boost my signal and not drop out like I did the other night. Especially when I was hosting, that wasn't great. But yeah, we'll soldier on and see how it goes tonight.
Wonderful. Just before we kick off, just if you're watching or listening, give us a like, comment, review, whatever you like on your social platform or however you're taking the podcast. Shout out if you want to jump on our membership page. It's $1.49 a month or 85 pence a month. That'd be good if you could help us out, sort of help cover our costs and all that. And it'd be remiss of me to remind you all that our shop is finally open. If you jump on our website, toonunderpod.com, or type in Toon Under Podcast on Google, that'll take you to our website, and there's a link for our shop there. So, yeah, if you want to jump on and buy yourself a t-shirt or a jumper, go your hardest. So yeah, I think we'll start tonight at the start. Probably we might work backwards a little bit. We'll start from the most recent and we'll sort of filter back down. Now I don't know if it's the big news, but the main news of the last 24 hours is the Chris Wood to Nottingham Forest. Sort of come out of the blue. I don't think any of us were expecting this. Jack, I'll start with you, mate. How did you feel about that when you sort of woke up this morning, or you might have been wake up in the middle of the night doing a bottle or a feed or something like that, and you're scrolling through Twitter? What were your feelings when you first sort of seen this?
Well, first of all, it's funny how you just said we'll start at the most recent, because I've literally just checked Twitter, and the official account has said that Loris Karius has signed a new contract. So signed a contract at the end of the season.
Great to have you on board, Loris, for the rest of the season.
So that's not massive news, but that's the most recent thing. So I don't know, we might talk about the goalkeepers later maybe, but Chris Wood was
that was 6 on my run sheet. Now you've
there you go.
Pumped up the pecking order.
Chris Wood was a really, really interesting one. It was this morning when I woke up and I saw that. I went onto Twitter, which is the first thing I do every morning. There was a lot of talk about Chris Wood going to Nottingham Forest. It's interesting. I didn't think that Chris Wood would leave this window, if I'm honest. I thought that we still need him. He's been starting games recently, and Wilson's fitness record everyone knows about. Isak's just coming back and he's not fully up to speed yet. I don't think Chris Wood's good enough for Newcastle, probably now, and I don't think, definitely not moving forward. He's done it. He's done his job. He's done what he came in to do. I really like his character, but we need better than him going forward. I don't think that's kind of a controversial thing to say. So I expected him to go in the summer, to be honest. He's got a year and a half left on his contract, and he is on big wages. He's on around 70 grand a week by all accounts. I was surprised that it was going to happen this month, but if there's an option or an obligation for them to buy at the end of or if it's performance related or whatever it is, I think that's fair enough. It's probably an attractive deal for our club when he's not going to be seeing many minutes. I think he'll need to be replaced in some form, whether that's with a wide forward who can play up front. That's probably more likely than bringing in an out-and-out striker. But strikers are expensive, attackers are expensive, as we know. So we'll see what happens. But I'm sure the club have got something underway here before sanctioning Chris Wood to leave.
Mark, I'll copyright Dimmy's Nostradimmy tag. How do you think the club will go replacing him? Because obviously they're not going to let him go without some kind of attacking player coming in. Are you of the opinion there'll be a third choice striker or a sort of second choice winger that could play striker?
I think if you start to look at what we've typically tried to build up, I think we'll get a flexible player. I don't see us going for another out and out like center forward. I just don't think we've got the money this window that we want to spend on that position. I also don't think we'll go into the rest of the season with only 2 named strikers. I think that's pretty dangerous, especially as Jack said, given the injury track records we've had. That's just asking for trouble. I will go on record. I've had some heated debates with people online today about Chris Wood and his usefulness and whether or not he's the worst buy ever. Look, my feeling is he was bought to do a very specific job. I think he's done that job exceptionally well. He hasn't scored the goals, but he's contributed a hell of a lot more to our cause, I guess, than just goals on the board. I know that's what every striker gets judged on, but look, he goes with, if he does end up going, he goes with my heartfelt thanks. I think he's been a great servant for the club in such a short period of time. He was instrumental in keeping us up, and so for that, thank you to Chris Wood, and wish him all the best. Look, he definitely needs upgrading. I don't know if we would sell him on or get rid of him in this window if we weren't in a position to get someone in to replace him. The recent comments by Dan Ashworth, I think, has summed it up, where we've got this we need to have a 1-in 1-out policy because we've got a full squad at the moment. So is it a case of we're trying to free up some wages and free up a squad space to make way for someone else? Or is it just that this is an opportunity right here, right now to get him off the books and potentially move him on now, where maybe in the summer it would be deemed a little bit more difficult because we already have someone else in? Maybe they're getting sort of like, killing 2 birds with 1 stone here and sort of prepping for the summer, but, banking on the fact that Isak's back fit and Wilson hopefully isn't relied on to do everything on his own this time. It's going to be interesting to see. It could go either way. That could go any way, to be honest. There's a whole heap of options. I personally am not sticking my neck on the line as a Nostradamus prediction on this one, but I'd be very surprised if they let him go without a grand plan. That just doesn't seem like the heads of the club anymore, to be doing things willy-nilly.
Go on, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm pleased you mentioned, Mark, there about his contribution, because he scored a couple of really important goals. He scored the equaliser against Southampton last season from that really good Shelby cross. He scored the winning penalty against Wolves, and he scored against Leicester the penalty this season, obviously the first goal. He scored the equaliser in the League Cup this season. So if we do win the League Cup, we've got Chris Wood to thank for that.
Would he get a medal for that or not? Was it just the squad on the day?
I don't know, to be honest.
Don't forget that question. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Let's not get too excited. But then his other goal was against Southampton as well this season. So, I know he's only scored 5 goals in something like 30-odd games, and it's not good enough for a striker, but let's not pretend he's, some useless idiot who hasn't done anything. He's had a few misses. He should have probably had 5 more goals, but there you go. He's contributed and he's done his job, I think. And there's definitely that comparison with Daryl Murphy, who came in under Rafa and performed his role in getting us promoted. He didn't cost 25 million, but football's moved on from then, so maybe he would these days.
Yeah, well, he's not I think every rational person would say he's not a 25 million pound player, but that's what it cost to get him. And we at the time we needed someone straight away. We needed someone immediately, and that was the easy hit. And for people to say he's the worst signing ever could be some of the most stupidest shit I've ever heard, because that is just preposterous. He's nowhere near the worst player that we've
recency bias.
No, yeah.
They obviously don't remember some of the crap that we've had over the years.
Maybe they've only been
Marcelino, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Christian Besadas.
Yeah. We'll circle back to what your breaking news, Jack, about with Carrier signing for the end of the year. Mark, where is that got Carl Darlow's paper stamped?
We certainly can't go into the rest of the season with 5 goalkeepers on the books. Certainly not sort of taking up 5 squad positions anyway. So someone's going to miss out. It'd be a bit stupid of any of them to kind of sit there, pick up their wages, and not want to play. Look, Darlow's probably the obvious one because he's probably down the pecking order now that Dubravka's back. I'm actually really surprised Dubravka's back and apparently now second choice keeper. I thought he may have burnt bridges, but it shows what sort of person Eddie Howe is, that he's effectively just gone, right, blank slate, don't care, you're back, you're playing for us, you do your job now, and all's good. But it does point to Darlow going out on loan, if not a permanent deal. I don't think we'll get a permanent deal for him, but if we can get him off the books and get him out playing football, maybe he impresses on loan, and then we get a permanent deal for him in the summer.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun sort of last 2 weeks of the window. That's for sure.
but Darlow though, right? He's been here forever. He's been here since 2015 or even before that. He came at the same time.
Him and Lascelles come with us on.
Yeah.
And he's never from Forest, and he seems happy in that role he's got as kind of third choice goalkeeper. Second choice goalkeeper. He's good enough to play at the low end of the Premier League or at the high end of the Championship. So I'm just interested in why he's never wanted to move before. He's contracted until 2027 as well. He was one of those players who got a really long contract in Ashley's last few years. So he's probably not on big money.
Got a really nice.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Gift.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Darlow's hanging around when we win the Champions League. Carl Darlow is there as the homegrown goalkeeper. He's like the Scott Carson or the Richard
Scott Foster. No, Scott Carson, not Scott Foster.
Ben Foster.
Yeah.
He's like, like goalkeepers go on forever, don't they? So
yeah,
Darlow will be there when we win the Champions League in 10 years' time, and he'll be on his Zimmer frame, and he'll be classed as a homegrown player, and that's fine.
They'll have to help him up onto the stage and stuff like that to get him up. Now, Jack, this is a hyperbolic question. It's a true question loaded with facts. We're 19 days. As of today, we are 19 days into the transfer window. We haven't signed anyone. No one has any idea who we are going to sign, and no one's losing their shit about it. How did we get here?
Yeah, it's quite strange, isn't it? It's just, we all remember last year's transfer window, and we remember parts of the summer transfer window where people were losing their shit. I think being third or fourth in the league matters a bit because we know that we've actually got a decent team now, and we're not kind of desperate in the same way we were last January. It was like you'll never get another transfer window like that.
I stand by it. It's the hardest transfer for anyone in history. What we had last year,
it was completely unprecedented, and the way they went about it was very, very clever in the end. And I think signing Trippier first, we've been over this before, but I think signing Trippier first was a huge advantage. But yeah, no, it's nice that nobody's losing their shit. I don't think anyone should be losing their shit because you'll sometimes get people who say things like, we need this or we need that. But then the follow-on question from that is, well, what do we need it for? Like, are you saying that we need this to maintain our place in the Champions League position? Or are you saying that we need it to finish in the top 6? Or, what, like, are you just saying we need it because we need, players in the squad? And that's true. Like, I think it's fair to say that we could do with extra midfielders. I'll never say we need something, but I think we could do with extra midfielders, because we saw the sort of panic last weekend when Bruno got injured, and there is gaps in the squad in certain positions. So, but I think the owners and Eddie Howe and Ashworth have earned trust now, so we can trust that what they're doing is the right thing. There's still 11 days to go. Like, I think I saw a funny thing on Twitter before about someone saying that Chris Wood's gonna leave. I hope Eddie's checking Twitter so he knows that we need to sign a replacement. Because if he doesn't log on to Twitter, he won't know. Like, you get a lot on social media, and we're all guilty of it. We're all football fans, and we all get excited about things and emotionally invested in it. But I'm just so pleased to have a calm transfer window for once. And I think I said at the beginning, I'm not bothered if we don't sign anybody, really. Like, the season's still going to exceed expectations for what I thought we were going to do.
For
Obviously,
sure.
when you're in this position, you get excited about it and you think, oh, if we could just do this, or this. But yeah, there's a question which I don't know if we're going to cover tonight, but a question over how advantageous even is qualifying for the Champions League this season, a couple of years before schedule, you know. So we've talked about that in our group chat a bit. So yeah, it's just nice to have a nice calm transfer window. I've even forgotten it's a transfer window a bit sometimes, which is really nice
because nothing's happened.
Nothing's happened, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
Nothing to get up and down about. Mark, so we unfortunately copped the Bruno injury that you guys spoke about on the review pod. Luckily for us, amongst our group, we've got a doctor and he's diagnosed him with a sort of 1 to 2 weeker. So thanks, Timmy, for being all over the medical diagnosis from the other side of the world. They've come in really handy. How do we I'm really interested to hear your thoughts here, because there's 2 ways we could go about this. The obvious one is ASM comes in and we just keep our 3 midfielders and everything sort of keeps going along. Big Joe goes back into a midfield, puts his Brazilian bulldozer cape on and off he goes. Or do we sort of realise where we're at the moment and we play with 2 midfielders and Isak in that sort of a more advanced role that he sort of filled in when he come on against who do we play? I forgot. Fulham, yeah. Who we come on for last week, and we still have that midfielder on the bench where we can sort of revert back to 3 in the midfield if the game needs it, and we still have that 1 in reserve if, heaven forbid, something happened to one of the 3 already. Which way are you leaning towards here?
I think we'll probably go into the Palace game. I think ASM, it's a tough call because I still don't think Eddie Howe trusts him fully. I was full of praise in the Fulham review. I thought ASM did really well when he came on. He put himself about. He put the effort in. So fair play to him for that. But can he do that without any lapses to give like Palace easy outs now and again? It's like it's okay him sort of showcasing that he can press a player and keep the press for a little bit of time, but as soon as he doesn't do that, then the pressure's released straight away. So whether Eddie Howe trusts him to do that, I don't know. It was interesting when Isak came on. I think everyone thought he was just going to come on for Wilson, and when Wilson was kept on the pitch, and it was like, yeah, I'm kind of seeing a little bit of the thought process of what Eddie Howe's thinking in terms of how he might be able to get these players all playing together in the same side. So yeah, look, I don't think Isak's ready for starting games right now in terms of what Eddie Howe feels his recovery is. I think he'll probably be off the bench again. I think ASM will probably start. If ASM doesn't start, Joe Linton definitely drops back in the midfield, and it wouldn't surprise me if Murphy plays instead of ASM.
Oh, tasty. I like it. Jack, do you think this injury sort of fast tracks our search for a midfielder, sort of number 6 or a more advanced player?
Probably. I think we were looking for one anyway. We've got Shelby who's injured and he's getting on a bit anyway. And we needed depth in that position. We needed a bit of extra quality. The sort of accepted sort of situation apparently is that Eddie wants a number 6, sort of a deep line midfielder, so Bruno can push forward a bit. And we were heavily linked with Alvarez from Ajax in the summer, who apparently bid for him on transfer deadline day. So I think it might fast track it, but I don't think these owners and this regime are reactive to things. Although having said that, they did go and buy Isak in the summer when Wilson got injured.
And lose 60 million.
Then they've done the same they've done the same last January when Wilson got injured, and they went and
but they had to,
that week
they
as
didn't
well.
have any strikers other than Dwight Gale.
Yeah.
But they're only reactive when Callum Wilson gets injured. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Maybe we need him to get injured to get that midfielder in there.
Yeah, with Isak though, he'd been scouted earlier in the summer and they were interested, but the fee was too high at that stage. But he's going to be like he could be our number 9 for the next decade, you know. So he's a guaranteed quality signing, pretty much. So I don't know if it'll fast track what we're doing. It might bring forward what they were thinking of doing in the summer. But I don't think they're going to be panicked into anything. I don't think they're going to be rushed into doing anything that they're not comfortable with. I think they've got the targets, and if the deal becomes available, they'll go for it. They might have a little bit more urgency to that now with Bruno. Although hopefully he's not going to be out for long, but it just shows you though, if there is panic when he gets injured. So we don't want to be in a situation where we're relying on Bruno, and even if Longstaff or Willett got injured or Joe Linton, there would be big concern there as well. So I think it might bring plans forward, but it's still going to be considered and calm, and there's still going to be a logic to it, rather than just doing a Chelsea and just scattergunning and buying everybody who's available.
Yes, that's a great segue, mate, because I want to touch on the article that Luke Edwards dished up on Monday, which was, I think, Monday in the UK. I think it came out where we're looking to sign, well, the sort of headline read Conor Gallagher, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Hakim Ziyech from Chelsea. Now, obviously, we're not going to sign all three of them players, but they're the three we're looking at. Do you have a preference, Mark, of which one you would prioritise?
For me, probably Conor Gallagher, just because I think he's young. He looked good when he was on loan at Palace in spells. Inconsistent, I think, but with a fairly high ceiling is what my initial thoughts were on him when he was at Palace. Obviously, Chelsea have been struggling all over the pitch this year. They're panic buying. Apparently, they're buying players, and Potter has absolutely no idea that they're buying them until they rock up at the training ground. Not really an ideal scenario, given what he was used to at Brighton, where everything was very sort of fluid and everything was like sort of all in place and everything worked together. So yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system for him. But look, I think given the potential there for Gallagher, I think I'd like to see what Eddie Howe could do and the coaching staff could do with him longer term. I think he could provide a little bit more spark in that midfield, and it gives us that, again, another homegrown player that adds to that quota that we need to keep an eye on, I think.
He fits that sort of English mold, doesn't he, Jack? Where, like, I know everyone talks about it's the English tax and like you got to pay extra for English players in the Premier League and stuff, and they are right, but there's actually logic behind it where you're not going to have that, like, having to acclimatise to a new country. If you move from, say, European country, like the weather and all that, like, you don't have to worry about it. So you actually, it's more of a safe bet buying an English player than what it is for an overseas player. So do you think that could have something to do with it as well?
Yeah, to an extent. Like, you need the homegrown players in, but they do cost more money. But Gallagher's only 22, and he scored 8 goals when he was on loan at Palace. That's a really good return for a young midfielder. And he also had a good season on loan at West Brom. So, I haven't watched a lot of Gallagher sort of, concentrating on him, but he's been good when he's been out on loan. He's struggled to get into the Chelsea team a little bit, but Chelsea's not exactly a massively functional club at the moment. So I don't really know what's going on there. And Potter's doing some weird things with the formations and the systems. So I trust that if he's a good enough player, Eddie Howe gets his hands on him, he'll turn him into what he wants him to be. He would seem to be more of like a box-to-box sort of midfielder than what we maybe need. But we're not going to say no to good players, and he's in the England squad as well. So there was a lot of things from Chelsea fans on Twitter saying that he's technically limited, and he's not that great a footballer. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think we'll get any of them in this window. Chelsea, it's probably a little bit just sort of lazy journalism to an extent, because Chelsea are desperate to sell players now because they've bought everybody, so they need players off the wage bill. And I was just looking at Dexter's comment here about Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He says RLC for me. I looked at how old he is, and he's only 25. He seems to have been around forever, and he's been out on loan a lot of times. Yeah. But he's on something like 150 grand a week or something crazy. So he'd be, if we paid his full wages, he'd be our highest wage earner all of a sudden. and he's had a lot of injury problems in the past. So he's a good player again, and if Eddie got his hands on him and if we could keep him fit, I think he'd be good. But I just don't think that we're not just going to buy these players from Chelsea because they need to get rid of them, and if they're not a good fit for us, and if they don't pass the no dickhead character test as well that we've got in place.
Yeah, I still think it is something to watch, especially probably in the last week to maybe 3 or 4 days of the window. They're going to be desperate, and I think the players mentioned to an extent as well, will be desperate to get out of there because there could be a chance that they might not make a squad or have a very limited sort of second half of the season. So I'm sure they'd be sort of talking to their managers as well, wanting to try to get themselves out and get themselves more game time. And I still think Pulisic is one to watch as well. I think we had a nibble at him during the summer. I don't think it probably won't be a buy, but it could be a loan to buy or even a loan for the last 6 months.
I think he might be injured at the moment. Again.
Oh yeah, well, the 3/4 of their squad's injured. So yeah, I don't know. It might be just something to watch in the last week of the window whether we go in for it, just for a loan.
He's probably like the player who's in a position that we could do with sort of strengthening or getting some depth in. Obviously, the central midfield at the moment is pressing, but Pulisic, before Miggy went on his Ballon d'Or run, everyone said that we needed a winger, and we did. We do need depth in those positions, especially because Richie and Fraser are going to be probably gone next season, and Murphy might be gone as well. He's done his job, but he's not good enough for Champions League if we're getting at the Champions League. So yeah, we're going to need upgrades in those positions anyway. But Pulisic is probably on big wages as well. I don't know.
I think he'll be on a fortune, but realistically, you're going to make that back just purely and simply off merchandising from the US.
So he would be the one, like Keegan said, he'd be the one that I would think is the one that's the most likely from Chelsea. I think Ziyech is too old. He's 29. We don't need old.
I don't think we need.
Players. So I think Pulisic might be the one, but yeah, that doesn't seem to be a link at the moment.
I just might say what you just said there, Mark, about merchandise and stuff like that. I've actually looked a bit into this, and it's a long sort of myth that clubs make a fortune off merchandise sales if they're a big name player, and like say if it was Messi come to Newcastle, that the club is going to make all this money off merchandising and stuff like that. The unfortunate reality is that Castor will be making all the money.
It's the shirt sponsor that gets it. What it opens is opportunities for higher merchandising contracts, higher sponsorship deals.
Saudi Air, perhaps, or something like that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But if you suddenly have like your viewership overseas go from here to here, like you literally like maximizing your market share in terms of your audience, which then makes it easier to justify those bigger sponsorship deals.
Yeah, and there was, I haven't actually read it yet, but there was a post out on Twitter. Was it Kieran Maguire that posted something about, was it wages and compared to revenue or something like that? You're our local sort of football finance expert with.
There was something else that went, it was just before, and it was I think it was for 21 to 22, and Newcastle's wages to turnover is 95%. And that's a good indication of whether a club's overspending on wages and what their income is. And we know that our income completely flatlined under Mike Ashley, and it didn't do, the commercial income, it basically just stayed the same. It just didn't increase at all over 10 years. And then the big six or the bigger clubs in the league, theirs went up by hundreds of percent, So our wages, we're currently paying a lot in wages because we haven't got the turnover. And that's where Champions League qualification or European qualification comes into play. And that's where commercial deals, which is what Darren Eales is doing and the other guy that came in. And this is going to take a little bit of time to get put in place. But that's why people will ask about why Chelsea are able to do what they're doing with their money and with the financial fair play. But that's why basically they've got huge income, commercial, and they've had European football, and they sell players. We've talked a little bit about this, but we just haven't sold anyone of note since we sold Perez for 30 million. And before that, it was Wijnaldum and Sissoko when we got relegated. So the way that Ashley ran the club has meant that there's a lot of scope for improvements and increasing all of these areas, because he just ran it, as everyone knows, on a shoestring, which means that we are going to be able to launch hard, when we get into Europe. And these things like Europe and the income, commercial income, and selling players all go hand in hand. So when these things start happening, then we'll be able to start. FFP will be less of a problem. That's probably not what you asked.
It's going to be a snowball effect.
Yeah, that's not what you asked, Toon, but yeah, that's what's been going on over the last few days. And then that was that thing today about the 95% wages to turnover. It explains why the situation we're in.
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of have that information when you sort of questioning why we haven't signed players and why can't we do what these other clubs are doing around us. Well, that's because. Now on
just before you go on, I just want to agree there with Jay. The talk is that Chelsea are giving huge contracts to these players, like over multiple years, like 7-8 year contracts.
To try and 8-year deal in.
Yeah, so the idea is that your fees and your wages get split over the term of the contract. So in terms of the financial fair play impact, it doesn't actually add up to that much. It's like 8 million a year or something in terms of the financial fair play impact. The problem is always then what happens if they tank. If Mudryk comes over and can't handle the pace or the power of the Premier League and absolutely flops, then they've got like this player that they've paid a fortune for, probably paying him absolutely arm and a leg in wages for, and they've got him stuck there for 7 years and they're not going to be able to get rid of him, or at least if they do get him out on loan, they're paying some of his wages. So it's kind of like cheating the system a little bit at the moment, but they're relying on it actually working to get them back up the table. It's a massive roll of the dice by the new American owner. And if it doesn't come off, then they could be in some pretty serious trouble.
Yeah, it's something we've seen creep into the AFL, especially over the last couple of years, is clubs sort of either lengthening contracts or front ending them, and because obviously AFL has a salary cap, so they are sort of handcuffed with what each club can only spend the same amount of money. So depending on how salary caps are, they either front load the contract or they back end the contract, depending on which shape their salary is in, or what you've just mentioned, Mark, where they do sign players for a 6 or 7 year period instead of a 3 to 4 year period, and just stretch that money over an amount of time. Like it's smart business, really. But yeah, it's just that sort of cloud hanging over your head if like injuries or whatnot stretched over that 8 year. Like
injuries,
a lot can happen in
loss of form, just not hitting the ground running, especially if you're buying like a really expensive player that you're buying from another Premier League club who's a proven talent. That's kind of like one thing. If you're buying an up-and-coming player like Mudryk is like this huge talent and everyone was after him, yes, but he's not a tried and tested player at the highest levels in terms of the Premier League and playing all those extra hard games that he's going to get over here. So it's going to be interesting to see, how that model works out for them. But for me, it's just a massive gamble on their behalf. And they're banking on it actually coming off for them.
And the other thing about FFP as well is that, like, UEFA are not sitting over Chelsea saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's not how FFP works. Chelsea, it's over a 3-year reporting period. Chelsea can do whatever the fuck they want, and nobody can stop them from doing that. It just means that as the years go by, it's going to be taken into their accounts, and then they might fall foul of financial fair play. That happened to Manchester City, and they got a ban from Europe, but then it was overturned on appeal. Everton have been in all sorts of trouble with it. And apparently I was listening to an Athletic podcast last night about Everton, and they have to run their transfers past the Premier League at the moment to make sure that they're compliant with FFP, because they were in such a mess. Like, if you looked at their finances, it's hard to understand how they weren't sanctioned in some way. But then some clubs in Europe have been sanctioned, and it's been a fine, you know. So the other part of this is, did Chelsea give a shit about it? Do they actually care that they're blasting this FFP thing? Because what's actually going to happen to them if it's a fine? Well, the owners can just pay it, you know. Like that might be taken into account in future years and things. So let's just look at Barcelona. You know, what's the actual consequences to overspending, and is it worth the risk of just trying to get good players? It's all once it gets to breaching it, it's all a bit murky about what actually happens. So I
guarantee that we'd be screwed over, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, like I don't know if Chelsea's owners actually care like about financial fair play. I'm sure they understand it, and they've got accountants who understand it. But financial fair play is changing anyway. Like they're changing from the current format to something else anyway. So it gets and it's a UEFA thing. So it just gets to the stage where it's like, does this even really matter that much? What's the consequences going to be? Yeah, it's hard to know because it's also murky and sort of non-transparent when it gets to that point. That Newcastle are trying to do the right thing or trying to do it sensibly, which I think is the right way to run the club anyway, because it's going to mean that we're sustainable. But it's going to take a bit of time before we can start spending, proper serious money, more than we already have done.
Yeah.
But I accept that. I accept that because I want the club to be run. I don't want to be Chelsea who just go and buy Brighton's best player for 60, 70 million. I don't want to do that. I just think that's lazy scouting, and I'd rather do it in a smart way, in a way that's going to be more sustainable.
Well, I was looking at that the other day, and you can go out and buy a player for 100 million quid, and then you're still paying them that stupid high salary as well. Or you can pay, say, 20 million and get a young 20, 21-year-old, develop them through into that top player, and you can increase their salary as and when they provide the points that you dictate. They need a new contract. They've proven themselves at this level, and we're going to reward them and keep them around. And then you're paying that salary anyway that you would have had to have paid for that 100 million player, but you've saved yourself 80 million quid in the meantime.
Yeah, and look at Caicedo, right, for Brighton. He's played 25 Premier League games, and he's only come into the team properly. He came in last season, and now he started this season really well. And all of a sudden, he might be sold for 60 or 70 million, Like, that's good scouting from Brighton, and it's just laziness from clubs who are going to go and buy him for that much money, I think, because and I'm pleased that we've got the man in charge now who was at Brighton, who oversaw all this. We might be doing it on a bit of a different scale, and we might go and make the odd big signing. But 25 Premier League games, come on, it's what's going on, just on another little note, I saw a thing about the spend in the January transfer window, and the Premier League is so much more than any of the other leagues around Europe. So all of the money's in the Premier League at the moment, which is why these crazy things can happen. Cucurella's gone and he's sitting on Chelsea's bench. They signed him because Manchester City were going for him, and they've done the same with Mudryk because Arsenal were going for him. Yeah. Chelsea's a different matter. They're a bit crazy, but yeah, it's an interesting situation, and I'm in terms of Newcastle, I'm just pleased at the way that we're doing it in a more considered and sensible way. And it's going to take a little bit more time than we might like, but we're going to get there in the end, and we're going to be thankful for the way that they've gone about doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just to finish on Chelsea, they've got 87 players on their books. I'm sure they could flog off 20 players and over the next couple of years and sort of balance that up as well, and no one would really know. Now, I probably shouldn't say this because I don't want to be labelled a plain nonce or any one of them flight tracker nerds or anything like that. But I have received word in the last few minutes via another plain nonce correspondent that there has been a plane arrived from Dortmund that's just landed in Newcastle, which is the club's private jet that's just landed from Dortmund. Now, that means Mukoku's it's on. It's happening right now. So
breaking news. Tune in the pod.
Yeah, we can clip this up and retweet it. Out in a couple of days' time? What time? I'll just check my world clock here. It is. It's 10:40 in the UK on Thursday morning. So remember, you heard it here first from the friend of Plain Nonsense. Then Mukoku's on, and that's why we've sold Chris Wood. So it's going to be Wood out, Mukoku in, and Bobby's going to have a coronary, I reckon, when it gets announced. So, I don't want to incriminate anyone, but Bobby is the plain nonce.
Bobby's turned into a proper plain nonce.
Yeah. This is one last thing.
It wouldn't actually surprise anyone though if that did happen, would it? Because he was linked last week.
Well,
this is
Bobby,
the 18-year-old.
Bobby watching Flight Trackers.
Well, we know he watches Flight Trackers,
but no, that.
That's what it doesn't surprise anyone because we know it already.
But yeah, like if Mukoku, he's the 18-year-old who's been scoring goals in the Bundesliga, but we were
he's 22.
Alleged.
Oh yeah, alleged. Yeah, he's an alleged
18-year-old.
Yeah, Obafemi version 2, we'll call him.
But you know that like I was joking before about Eddie logging onto Twitter and realizing that he has to sign a replacement for Chris Wood, but like this isn't Mike Ashley's Newcastle anymore. The club know that they need a replacement or that they need to do something, you know. And
well, he must have been on Twitter, I reckon.
He must have been on Twitter. In the 40 minutes since we started, he's logged on and he's gone, right, get that plane over to Dortmund.
Scrolling up to find Sean Casey's latest gossip column efforts.
But he cracked it because he was in the For You column. He wasn't in the following column, so he didn't actually see it properly now. Thanks, Elon.
But he fits the bill of a young player. Like he fits what we need and what we want. It'd be a massive coup by all accounts because he's really good. So yeah, whether he's 18 or 22, he's a good player. But we'll see what happens.
So he should be good playing against kids when he's full grown adult.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we might park the transfer stuff there until I get word that he's in the training ground having the medical. We'll move on to the Crystal Palace game on the weekend. It's a 5:30 p.m. kickoff in the UK, which unfortunately is a 4:30 a.m. kickoff for Sydney and Melbourne fans. It's a 3:30 kickoff for the people who live in the past up in Queensland. It's just about the shittest time for a game for us, isn't it? I reckon it's hard to wind down and get back to sleep after that. So yeah, it's just they've done us dirty here. But I'll just a bit of team news from Crystal Palace. Centre back Anderson is probably their best defender. He's going to miss with a calf injury. He also missed this morning game, which we'll just touch on in a minute. At home this season, Crystal Palace have won 4, drawn 2, and lost 4, which is not a great home record, I must say. They've conceded 16 goals in their 10 games, which is a Premier League high as well. So they are there to be got at home. And they've only kept 1 clean sheet at home this season. So there are goals at Selhurst Park, so we've just got to find them now. Jack, I'll come to you first, mate. You watched the game on this morning, our time. I watched the first half. I had a couple of things I needed to do this morning, so I missed the second half. But you watched most of the game. How did you see Crystal Palace?
Yeah, I was watching it at the same time as making porridge and I had Peppa Pig on the iPad as well, so I was kind of a little bit distracted. But no, they look all right. Like Man U were the better team in the first half, but Palace almost scored, and De Gea made a really good save.
It was a great save, I've seen that. Yeah,
and then Man U scored, and everyone just thought they'd go on and win it. But then I was doing the daycare drop off for the last 10 minutes, so I missed that goal. It wasn't Palace have fucking annoyed us already twice already this season. They've had 2 0-0s at St James's Park. I'm hoping that because they're at home, they're going to have to, they're going to come out a little bit and try and attack us so we can do what we do when teams do that. But they're not a bad team. Like they're firmly in mid-table, but it's been interesting. There's been a lot of sort of discontent on social media about them, and sort of unhappiness about the way they've been playing, even though they're firmly in mid-table. But yeah, they've got some decent players, but nothing that we should be overly worried about. But if we can get 3 points from this, that would be a huge week, with the Fulham game as well.
Well, we'll touch on sort of this weekend's sort of fixtures in a whole in a second. But Mark, do you think, having already played them twice, they think that sort of, it's my new favourite term because it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, the low block is how they're going to set up? Or do you think being at home this time they might play a little bit different?
I don't know. I think teams like that are probably looking at us at the moment going, if we try and attack them, they're going to tear us apart. And that's how we've typically managed to win our games quite big, is when teams are kind of like on the front foot trying to get at us and leave space in behind for the likes of Miggy. And, obviously we're without Bruno for this one, so we can't get those little dinky balls through for Miggy to run onto. But, look, you've got to think that they're going to treat the game with a little bit more respect than a typical home game where they're going to come out and try and sort of play us off the park. I don't think they'll believe that. I think our defensive record speaks for itself this season, and I don't think many teams are kind of going at us thinking, oh, well, we'll get at them and we'll score more than them. I think a lot of teams are kind of hoping to keep it tight and maybe get something on the break from us. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. But, they've got people like Zaha and, they've got a couple of attacking players who are probably not comfortable defending and playing deep anyway. So those are the players that I think we've probably got to try and get at. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, hopefully we get at them and score early, and then we can open them up. If we get dragged into a tough contest, I can see it being another nervy game against them.
Yeah, I think the longer the season goes on, the more it sort of solidifies my thoughts that if we score first, we're hard to beat anyway. But if we score first, it really plays. It's a really stupid and obvious thing to say, but it really plays in our hands where teams just can't sit back in their low block anymore. They have to actually come out and try and score, which sort of helps us as well. So if you look at the games that we've sort of done really well, most of them games we've scored early, and it sort of forced teams to keep coming at us. So yeah, hopefully we can do that. Now we'll just touch on quickly. I never would have thought that a Crystal Palace versus Newcastle game is a really, really big and important game in a Premier League season where relegation isn't a factor. But if you have a look at this weekend's fixtures, Liverpool play Chelsea and Arsenal play Man United. So in the context, I know we're sort of looking at a reverse relegation at the moment where we're still looking at teams around us to lose, but not to keep us up. It's to keep us up in the Champions League spot. So it's going to be a really big week for us in terms of results and stuff like that. Like, it's a really big chance that we could put a bit of distance between us and the teams outside the top four, Jack.
Yeah, Fulham are playing against Spurs as well at Craven Cottage. And Spurs are also playing tomorrow morning for us against Man City. I did a little thing before last weekend's fixtures and looked at everyone's fixtures and what the position might be at the end of the Crystal Palace game. And it did look quite good for us. If we could get 6 points, then we'd be in a really strong position. We could be 7 points clear of fourth place by the end of this weekend. We could quite easily be that, which is quite amazing, really. And if that happens, I'll really start to believe that we might be able to actually do this, because we've still got a lot of the teams around us to play at home as well. Man City, the only team we've got left to play away, and that's the weekend after the potential League Cup final. So we'll have that out of the way by the end of February, early March, and then we've got most of the teams around us at home. So these 2 weekends, I think I put on Twitter, could be pivotal to the Champions League race. And we passed the first test last weekend. We just about passed the first test.
Yeah.
But I thought 4 points would be a pretty decent return from these 2 games. So I won't be massively disappointed if we draw. I think Palace are quite difficult to play against, and they've proven already twice this season that they can make life difficult for us. So yeah, but it is a big game, I think. And if we win this, like I said, I'll really start to believe that we might actually finish in the top 4 and get Champions League.
Yeah, will be crazy. I'll jump into one of our viewer questions here, Mark, and I'll ask this of you. Do you think, not so much, the question is how many changes, if any, would you make for the Palace game with the League Cup semi on Wednesday morning? Do you think that'll factor in to anything on the weekend, or is it all chips in on the weekend and we'll go chips in again on Wednesday, knowing we've got that week we don't play the next weekend, so we've got the 7 days recovery?
Yeah, pretty much. I can't see Eddie Howe taking. I mean, he doesn't rest players. He'll give players who are playing well their chance to keep their shirts, which is great. And I think that's kind of what's giving us this momentum that we've got, because everyone's fighting for their shirt. Everyone knows if they let up, they're going to lose the shirt to someone on the bench at the moment, and people on the bench are like fighting tooth and nail to try and get that position back. So it is great. It seems to be working at the moment. It seems to be quite harmonious with the squad, where everyone's accepting that. And whether or not it's just because it's a new thing, and a year down the line, and people are starting to get a bit annoyed if they don't get their regular football and they think they're better than everyone else and what have you. But I don't think Eddie Howe's the type to necessarily rest players for an important game coming up. I think he'll expect that the fitness levels are at a certain level and players will be able to manage it. And obviously, as you said, look, the thing that works in our favour is we can play these 2 games and then we've got a week's recovery before the other semi-final.
The home one, which is going to be crucial as well.
Mm.
Just if anyone's with us live at the moment, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the comments and we'll answer them very shortly. I'll just touch on, I asked Jack today to give us his predicted 11 for the Crystal Palace game this weekend. This is how he's come up now. I will preface this by saying that he didn't have Mukoko in because we're not sure if his clearance will be in by the weekend. So we're not sure if he will be available. But he's gone Burn, Botman, Shah, Trippier. Pope in goal. Burn, Botman, Shah, Trippier. Longstaff is a holding midfielder. Joelinton and Willock and St. Maximin, Almiron and Wilson up top. Was that an easy one, Jack? Or
yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I think the thing we're going to have to do is replace Bruno, and we've only got 3 fit players who can play in central midfield. So Joe Linton's going to go back into the midfield. Longstaff did really well in that deeper position when he fell into that role against Fulham. Although really it was more of like a 2. Him and Joe Linton were together in the midfield when Isak came on. I think Maxi is due a start now, though. He's probably a little bit further ahead than Isak and is returning to fitness, and he's a natural left winger. I think the only reason really we saw Isak and Wilson together in that game is because we needed to score. Like, it was that game state where we needed the goal. So I don't think he would play them both together from the start against Palace. But that could be something that he chooses to do. I never even thought of Isak as potentially a number 10, in behind Wilson before. It's not something I thought of before. And Joe Linton and Longstaff could definitely hold as a 2 in midfield against certain teams. So Palace might be a team that they could do that in. So I wouldn't be totally surprised. And then, of course, the other one is Murphy. Twitter would absolutely have complete meltdown if Murphy started this game instead of St. Maximin, but he's done it before, and he's done a good job.
Yeah,
I can see it happening.
And we've won games where he's done that before, and Murphy's played really well in games where he's done that before. So I'll probably turn Twitter off for half an hour or so if that does happen, because it'll be absolutely unbearable. People crying on Twitter from the Newcastle fans, but yeah, I think that's the way it'll go, and we'll have Isak to come off the bench if we need him.
All right.
Big dog.
The big dog. We might we'll go to a couple of questions. We've got where are they? We've got Dex's fired through a couple. He's got one live one. He threw in during the week. We'll put the one during the week up first. Jack, you're our local Eurobeat expert, so you can take this one. What's the best Eurobeat theme song that fans have created? Is it Mitro's on Fire or He's from Blythe?
Well, I think Mitro's on Fire is a bit boring, to be honest. I think that it was stolen from Will Griggs on Fire, the ex-Sunderland
Who really wasn't.
Wigan hero, who really wasn't. But that one's just a bit annoying. And the fact that Mitro very rarely was actually on fire when he was at Newcastle. So
the steam coming
Mitro's
off
on fire.
Rage, not so
Yeah,
much.
he was on fire because he was angry, but not because he was scoring goals. So I would question the kind of factual accuracy behind that one. Whereas He's from Blythe is factually correct. Actually, he was born in Ashington. He was born in Wandsbek Hospital, the same hospital that I was born in, on the same day, only 6 years later. We share a birthday. So
what a city.
He lives in. He was born in Ashington, but he was brought up in Blythe, which, if people don't know, is a seaside paradise, not far from Newcastle.
Shout out to anyone watching from. Go on.
The drug port.
My choice is He's from Blythe, but I know what you were going to say, Keegan, because you've got family in Ashington as well, and your grandma was from Ashington.
Out. Yes, she was. So shout out to anyone watching from Ashington. Get yourself down to the Indus of the Premier. Lee will look after you. Greg will look after you. Tell them that I sent you, and I'm sure you'll get a cheap pint and a good conversation. So yeah, if anyone's in Ashington, make sure you get down there and tell them that I sent you.
And you'll probably bump into Steve
just rolling
on.
Yes, yeah. Tell him I'd send my regards to him as well. We're long-time drinking partners. Just on that, being the Euro pop expert that you seem to be, can you just maybe a couple of bars of the Dan Burn song? Because I've never heard that song before.
You'll never ever be Dan Burn. There you go.
Yes, that's good. No, I'll take that. Yeah.
Bravo.
I hope that satisfies Dex.
I'm not doing the dance, by the way.
Yeah.
I would try and do it, but I physically can't. I would probably break my leg.
Yeah. I don't want to have a 37-year-old hip replacement, so I'll give that a miss as well. Alan's got a question here as well. Which player has surprised you the most this season, and which player has disappointed you the most? Mark, you can go first, and I'll even let you pick which one you want to answer.
I am going to go for the one that's disappointed me the most, and I think it's probably Target. And I think it's probably not all down to him. Obviously, he's injured at the moment, but I just don't think he had the same spark as he seemed to have last season when he came. I think he was well up for it. He's got his permanent move and then doesn't seem to have really produced the goods, and then lost his position to Dan Burn, who's just been absolutely outstanding in that position. So yeah, for me, I was expecting big things from Matty Target, and look, hopefully he gets back into it. But for me, yeah, I was hoping for more.
All right, Jack. Oh, you get the leftovers. Which player surprised you the most this season?
That's a good segue, because my answer is related to that, and it's Dan Burn. Not just because he did that dance, but I wasn't, I knew that he played left back before for Brighton, and he played there for Fulham as well. But I didn't think he was going to be part of a defence that was going to not concede any goals basically all season, playing at left back out of position. So I would say that I thought that Target would be the starting left back. So I'd say that Burn is the one that surprised me the most. And he's also surprised me the fact that he just can't use his head for somebody who's 6'7".
And dribbles like prime Messi.
And he dribbles like Messi. Yeah. So he's definitely
and openly admits it as well.
He openly admits it. He said that, if I score, it would probably be with my foot, and that's what happened. So Dan Burn, that moment for that goal, I'll never forget that. Like, honestly,
it was his wrong foot though as well.
It was his wrong foot, and it was the League Cup. I never said Champions League. It was the League Cup quarterfinal, and it was just such an amazing moment. So yeah, Big Dan Burn has surprised me the most this season, and I've taught my daughter how to say Big Dan Burn.
Scores. All right, for the record, the most surprising player for me has probably been Sean Longstaff. I know he cops wax probably every week because of what he can't do, but I've said this before. I think sometimes we forget and focus on what players can do because it probably doesn't generate enough hot takes to what someone's really good at. So I think he's been, for someone who most people probably thought would be a fringe player, he started nearly every game, and he's a vital cog of what we've done this season. So I think he's surprised me the most, because I think most of us would have thought he probably would have been fifth choice midfielder when you look at the five that we sort of had, and he's firmly entrenched in the top three. So he's probably been the most surprising for me, and I think the most disappointed is probably maybe Alan. I mean, Alan, he's probably trying his best at the moment and things like that, but he's just not where he needs to be for the team, and I think he can get better. Is that nice and for you, Jack?
That's a very nice way of putting what you really think of him. But I'm pleased you did that, because you know, we might have to moderate the way we speak about Alan in the future.
Yes. So yeah, he'd be my most disappointing so far. And it's not saying he's not very good. He's just not where I think he thinks he should be, and I think where most people think he should be, he's not been there. So whether it's
probably the one player, without going into a massive, because we could do an hour on some
this is a wormhole. This is going to be a vortex. You're going to get sucked
He's probably the only player really that Howe has not managed to improve. From his coaching or the way that he's worked with them. He's maybe Jamal Lewis as well, but he doesn't really count at the moment. But Maxi's probably the one player who hasn't kicked on the way that some of the others have, and that we hoped he would. So it's a big 6 months for him for the rest of this season, starting hopefully on Saturday if he gets a start.
Yeah, as I said, I was impressed with him against Fulham, and he needs to just come in and do that week in, week out. And if he can do that, then stop taking those hits.
Problem as well.
And it solves a midfield problem. It creates more chances. It opens up defenses more, because they know that they can't just close him down, because he is like passing the ball. He is sort of trying to get teammates in more. He is like creating those chances. So look, for me, I think he's been disappointing by his own standards. I mean, in his head, he should be winning the Ballon d'Or every year. But the reality is that he needs more consistency and he needs more team play. I saw a bit of that against Fulham. So, fingers crossed he comes out against Palace and has a blinder.
And Dexter's mentioned Miggy here. Obviously, we all knew Miggy was going to score 50 goals by the halfway point. That's a good point, though. I was so excited about Dan Burn, I forgot about Miggy. I've got to admit.
Yeah,
Miggy's been ridiculous, to be quite honest, and he probably is the one that. At the start of the season, he probably is the one that's really surprised us the most, because he's been unbelievable.
Well, I think most fans wouldn't have been upset if they sold him in the summer transfer window, and I think that was probably the main position. I think we were sort of hoping to upgrade was that right wing position, because of his inconsistencies and his lack of sort of end product as well. But yeah, he's definitely turned that around this year. Before we finish, I just want to touch on this comment from David. Once Longstaff gets his shooting boots on, he'll be one hell of a player, 100%. If he stops being a pigeon killer, he could be anything. So Yeah, I 100% agree with that as well. And one last one here for BT. We've got Bobby Moncur's 78th birthday today. So I know Bobby's a big fan of the show and he watches and listens most weeks. So Bobby, if you're listening to this, happy birthday to you, mate. Yeah, hope you enjoy the episode as well. So yeah, that's just a bit from us. Jack, you got anything else before we shoot off the bed, mate?
I don't think I do. No, I'm looking. Oh, just that next week we'll be doing this on Wednesday instead of Thursday because obviously the cup game. So we don't want to miss out on the sort of quicker reaction thing.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll be moving this from Thursday to Wednesday, the live show. That's all.
Yep. Mark, any parting words of wisdom before we wrap this baby up?
No, just looking forward to getting Palace out of the way and getting onto the cup game. Starting to get a little bit excited about the semi-finals now.
Yes. Just before we go, Rico's just such a question here. Keegan, what did you think of the Arctic Monkeys? Rico, I'll give it a soft 5 out of 10. I thought they were pretty disappointing. In my summer of festivals and gigs, they were probably by far the worst one that I've seen. So
when you go to a gig every day, you probably get fatigued by the end of it. You know, you probably get a bit.
In my defense, I had a conversation with another person who I didn't go with, and I said I don't know if I was suffering from a killer's come down because I had the killers up really, really high and they didn't sort of quite catch up. But he said no, they were pretty shit. So that sort of made me feel a little bit better than I wasn't being biased towards anyone. But anyway, enough of my social life. We'll leave that here, boys. Once again, thank you very much for your time, Jack. It's been great to have you back on, mate. Even if it's just for an hour and get you out of bottles and shitty nappies, it's a win. So
it's a win for me. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Mark, same to you, mate. Really appreciate you doubling up, doing a back-to-back. I know they're tough as well.
I enjoy it. It's always nice to come on and have a chat about random football bollocks, isn't it?
Yes, that's fantastic. Everyone who's watching and listening, thanks very much for tuning in. We'll be back, I think, Monday night is it Monday night or Sunday night? I'm not sure.
It'll be Sunday because the game's on the Sunday. It'll be Sunday morning. Sunday,
yeah. So we'll be back Sunday night for Southern Hemisphere fans, and we'll be Sunday morning for Northern Hemisphere fans. So tune in there. We'll have all the reactions and hot takes from the Crystal Palace game in the weekend. But apart from that, once again, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.